Grace and peace. I'm Brian Musser, the Baptist Campus Minister at Drexel University, and this is Peace and Power Christian Fellowship, the peace of Jesus Christ to change our lives, the power of the Holy Spirit to change our world. And we are continuing our series, the Summer Term Bible Study. We're looking at passages from 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, talking about heavy is the crown, the rise and fall of the Hebrew kingdom. This is lesson 6, and we're going to concentrate on the fall of the north, or when Assyria conquers the capital city of Samaria of the northern kingdom of Israel, and how that whole downfall comes about. This is the first video in the 6th lesson, and we're going to look at that exile, the Assyrian exile of northern Israel. So as we're turning here, it's the first 6 verses of 2 Kings 17 that kind of gets to the heart of this. In the 12th year of Ahaz, king of Judah, Hoshea, son of Elah, became king of Israel in Samaria, and he reigned 9 years. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord, but not like the kings of Israel who preceded him. Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, came up to attack Hoshea, who had been Shalmaneser's vassal and had paid tribute. But the king of Assyria discovered that Hoshea was a traitor, for he had sent envoys to So, king of Egypt, and he no longer paid tribute to the king of Assyria as he had done year by year. Therefore Shalmaneser seized him and put him in prison. The king of Assyria invaded the entire land, marched against Samaria, and laid siege to it for 3 years. In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria captured Samaria and deported the Israelites to Assyria. He settled them in Halah, in Gozan, on the Habor River, and in the towns of the Medes. So this is what we have. This is Ahaz was king of Judah. Ahaz was king of Judah, but Hoshea was king of Israel. Hoshea was set up as king of Israel by Assyria as kind of a puppet monarchy of kind of a vassal state. The king of Assyria probably got distracted by other things. Hoshea decided to not pay tribute to Assyria, start courting Egypt. Assyria heard about this. Egypt was in no way, shape, or form competitive with Assyria at this moment. Hoshea decides that Israel doesn't, because of Hoshea's rebellion from Assyria, Assyria decides that Israel doesn't get to be a country anymore. Assyria comes and conquers Israel and deports many of the people away. And just getting kind of a reference point on the map, you can see Jerusalem, Samaria down there, Jerusalem down there. Samaria was conquered in 722. Some of the dates in red are places where Assyria had been pushing through over the years. The little areas highlighted in that yellow or tan are the places listed that the Israelites were deported to. And just so we know, it's about 1,000 miles away from Jerusalem. So they were marched 1,000 miles and resettled in brand new territory. And later in the chapter, we hear that Assyria moves in others to take the place of the northern kingdom of Israel. It's interesting to note that, and we'll probably get into this in a little bit more detail, that Babylonian and Assyrian deportations were significantly different, that Assyria moved everybody out of the land. I mean, we hear that they moved people in the land, and the land was depopulated so much that lions were causing problems. It has to be pretty wild for lions to cause problems in any sort of inhabited place. So that was Assyria, and Assyria took everybody and moved them someplace differently and dispersed them among other people and multiple groups. If we read later in the chapter, you hear that the Assyrians don't just move one sort of people back to Israel, they move multiple people back to Israel and kind of to do that. Assyria's type of exile and deportation tried to destabilize national and ethnic identities and get people away from their home territory as much as possible, get them out of their ethnic groupings as much as possible, and put them into labor and work camps and try to incorporate them into Assyrian nationality as much as possible so that they lose their independent identity. Now, it's interesting, the three places they moved them to were places where Assyria was working on developing new communities and towns and try to rebuild after some wars and things like that. And then the third place, the towns of the Medes, was on the border near the mountains, and those were just because they wanted a buffer zone in case the Media Empire, the Medes, attacked in certain ways too. So they put two of the places they moved the Israelites to were specifically to rebuild and repopulate towns. One of the places was to create a kind of a military buffer for those things as well. But as we were reading, this is not the only time. So this is not just a one and done deal. We can see that the northern kingdom of Israel has been losing traction, has been being depopulated over time. And this is just one of the last, this is the last straw of many. We see in 2 Kings 10, in those days, the Lord began to reduce the size of Israel. Hazael, Aram overpowered the Israelites throughout their territory, east of the Jordan, the land of Gilead, the region of Gad, Reuben, and Manasseh, from Aor by the Arnon Gorge through Gilead to Bashan. We looked at that in lesson 5. 2 Kings 15:29, in the time of Pekah, king of Israel, Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, came and took Ijon, Abel-Beth-Makkah, Noah, Kadesh, and Hazor. He took Gilead and Galilee, including all the land of Naphtali, and deported the people to Assyria. And then also 1 Chronicles 5:26 says, so the God of Israel stirred up the spirit of Pul, king of Assyria, that is Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, who took the Reubenites, the Gadites, and half-tribe of Manasseh into exile. He took them to Halah, Habor, Harar, and the river Gozan, where they all are to this day. So the northern kingdom of Israel's been losing people over time to Aram first and then Assyria later. And it's interesting, Assyria started pushing on the northern side of Aram, so Aram started pushing down into Israel and Judah. And eventually Aram, if we go back to this map, we see that Damascus, the capital of the Arameans, it falls in 732, which opens the door for Syria to push on through Aram and engage the Israelites there as well. So this isn't just a one and done sort of thing. It's a slow incremental decrease of the territory of northern Israel until the fall of the capital city Samaria in 722. And then they really do not ever come back as an established people. And when we read about the Samaritans later in Ezra and Nehemiah and in Jesus's day, and even until this day, which is kind of interesting, there are still people who consider themselves Samaritans. These would be descendants of the repopulated people that the Assyrians move in at the end of chapter 17. So now, looking at this in exile, the identity of the Hebrew people centered around being delivered from Egypt by the miraculous work of God, being given the law of Moses with the priesthood and the sacrifices included in that, being given the promised land with the city of Jerusalem and the temple included that, and being ruled by the Davidic monarchy. That's who the Hebrew people were. And you can see how exile, but also how the northern kingdom of Israel was struggling with parts of this identity. The Egypt peace was there, but they no longer really did not seem to be practicing the law of Moses. They were much more in idolatry. They had the promised land, but not Jerusalem and the temple. And the Davidic monarchy, they had been separated from that for over 200 years. So even before the exile, the northern tribes of Israel were struggling with their identity. But then moving them to the exile pretty much crushed any basic identity they had as a special people of God. It removed all of that except the law of Moses, but they had already stopped practicing that as well. And we will see that as a very big difference between what happens with northern Israel and southern Judah around the law of Moses in those ways. So, and there are substantial differences for how Assyria did deportations versus Babylonians, but that's for a later lesson. Just what is some questions to think about? What part of their identity was compromised before the exile? What parts would be compromised by the exile? What parts could survive the exile? And is there anything in our lives that we could compare to an exile? Which would be an interesting conversation to have. If you have any comments, drop down into the discussion section below. I would love to hear from you on any of these answers, but especially that fourth question there. As always, you can join us in person Sunday nights at 5 p.m. in the JEMIC. This conversation in particular will be happening on August 10th. Weekly wrap-ups on YouTube and or WordPress. I'm all over the social media, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, WordPress, and YouTube. Like, subscribe, and follow as appropriate. I enjoyed having this conversation with you. Hopefully it continues real soon.